Hey guys. Tonight we drift into a scene that smells like salt, wet wood, and bad decisions made with confidence. You're standing on a creaking dock as waves slap lazily against the hull of a ship that looks romantic only from a distance. Lantern light flickers across ropes, barrels, and faces that haven't slept properly in years. Somewhere, a gull laughs at you, fairly, honestly, because you're about to choose a life you absolutely don't understand. You imagine freedom, adventure, maybe a dramatic hat. What you're actually stepping into is hunger, filth, and a schedule dictated by wind and violence. And yes, before you ask, you almost certainly wouldn't survive this. Not in a tragic hero way, more in a gone quietly after a few bad weeks way. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step onto the deck, and the ship answers with a long, tired groan, like it's already warning you. The wood beneath your boots is damp, uneven, and slick with a film of seawater and things you don't ask about. The smell hits next, salt mixed with old fish, sweat, and something sour that suggests this vessel has seen far too much and cleaned far too little. This is your new home. Apparently. The crew barely looks at you. That's not kindness, it's indifference. On a pirate ship, attention is currency, and you haven't earned any yet. You squeeze past men with weather-cracked skin and eyes that scan constantly. Not out of paranoia, but habit. Every movement on deck matters. Every sound could mean work, trouble, or both. You quickly learn that space is a suggestion. There is nowhere to stand without being in someone's way. Ropes snake across the deck like tripping hazards with intent. Barrels shift as the ship rocks. And you're expected to move with it, even though your legs haven't figured out the rhythm yet. You wobble once. Someone snorts. Congratulations, you've made your first impression. Below deck is worse, much worse. You duck down into darkness so thick it feels textured. The ceiling is low, the air heavy and stale. This is where you'll sleep, if sleep is the right word for collapsing among hammocks, crates, and bodies. It's warm down here, but not in a comforting way. It's the warmth of too many people sharing too little air. You inhale and immediately regret it. Pirate ships weren't designed for comfort. They were designed to float, to move fast, and to hold just enough people to operate the sails and fight when necessary. Everything else, sanitation, privacy, personal space, was optional at best. You feel it immediately. Your shoulders tense. Your breathing shortens. Your body understands before your mind does. This place is not friendly. Up top again, the ship begins to move. Slowly at first, then with purpose. The dock pulls away, and with it, any realistic chance of turning back. You watch the shoreline shrink, thinking of everything solid and predictable you just left behind. The sea stretches ahead, wide and indifferent. It doesn't care why you're here. It doesn't care who you are. Someone shouts an order. You don't understand it, but you move anyway, copying what others do. This becomes your strategy for survival. Watch. Imitate. Don't ask questions. Questions mark you as inexperienced. Inexperience is tolerated only until it becomes inconvenient. The sun beats down, And you realize there's nowhere to hide from it. No shade, no relief. Your skin tightens. Sweat stings your eyes. You'd laugh about it, maybe make a joke about needing sunscreen. But the thought dies quickly. This isn't funny hot. This is the kind of heat that drains you slowly, methodically. Water is rationed. You learn this fast. The barrel you're directed toward holds liquid that looks harmless enough until you smell it. Stale, slightly metallic. You drink anyway, because the alternative is worse. Pirates knew better than to waste fresh water. And you're already on the wrong side of the math. By evening, your muscles ache in places you didn't know existed. You haven't done anything heroic, just climbed, pulled, stood, and tried not to fall. The work never really stops. It just changes form. You're always either preparing for something or recovering from it. As darkness settles, the ship doesn't grow quiet. It hums, creaks, breathes. The sea slaps rhythmically against the hull, and every sound feels amplified in the night air. You lie down, if you can call it that, wedged into a space that technically fits you. As long as you don't move. This is when the first doubt creeps in. Not dramatic regret, just a small, persistent question. How long can a person live like this? Historians still debate what truly motivated most pirates: greed, desperation, opportunity, or simple lack of options. Some joined willingly, chasing stories they'd heard in taverns. Others were pressed into service, given no choice at all. Either way, the result was the same. Once you were aboard, survival depended less on bravery and more on endurance. You close your eyes, listening to the ship cut through dark water, and realize something uncomfortable. This isn't the beginning of an adventure. It's the beginning of attrition. And you haven't even seen the worst of it yet. The romance dies quickly, not dramatically. There's no moment where a violin stops playing and reality storms in. It just leaks away. It seeps out through splinters in the deck and the ache in your lower back. By the second morning, you already understand that whatever fantasy brought you here has no place on this ship. You wake before the sun, not because you're disciplined, but because someone steps on you. Apologies are not offered, they're not expected. The ship is already alive with movement. Bodies climbing, pulling, shouting short phrases that sound less like language and more like tools being slammed together. You untangle yourself and stand, slightly dizzy, trying to remember when you last slept without the floor moving beneath you. Up on deck, the air is sharp and damp. Cold clings to your skin from the night. And the sun, when it finally appears, offers light but very little comfort. You expected mornings at sea to feel peaceful. Instead, they feel urgent. Everything must be done now. Before the weather changes. Before the wind shifts. Before someone decides you're in the way. You learn quickly that pirates don't work less than other sailors. They work more. There's no port authority to complain to. No regular resupply. No safety net. Every rope must hold. Every sail must be watched. Every mistake has consequences that arrive fast and without mercy. When someone yells, you move. When someone doesn't yell, you still move, because silence often means something has gone wrong. Food arrives eventually, if you're lucky enough to call it that. A chunk of hard biscuit, so dry it feels like it's pulling moisture directly from your mouth, and something vaguely salty that might have once been meat. You chew carefully, not because you're savoring it, but because rushing risks breaking a tooth. That happens more often than you'd think. Teeth, once damaged, do not recover out here. You think about how modern you would complain about airplane food. The thought almost makes you laugh. And then you stop yourself. Laughing at the wrong time draws attention. Attention is still something you don't want. The ship rolls, and your stomach protests. Seasickness isn't romantic either. It's not dramatic retching over the rail like in paintings. It's a constant nausea, a low-level misery that makes every movement feel like a bad idea. Some pirates tease you for it. Others ignore you. A few look almost sympathetic, until you realize that sympathy doesn't translate into help. By midday, your muscles are burning. Your hands are raw from rope. Salt stings every small cut you didn't know you had. The sun beats down relentlessly, reflecting off the water and turning the deck into a slow cooker. There's no shade worth mentioning. You squint, blink, and keep working. This is when you notice something important. No one talks about the future. No grand plans. No promises of riches. Conversations stick to the present. Wind direction. Sails. Who's on watch? The myth of pirate freedom dissolves under the weight of constant obligation. You're not free. You're busy. Constantly. Historians still debate why pirate life was so appealing to so many men at the time. Some argue it offered more autonomy than naval service. Others point out that it was often chosen only when other options were worse. What's clear is that whatever freedom existed came with a price paid daily. In sweat, injury, and exhaustion. As evening approaches, the work doesn't stop. It slows, maybe, but it never ends. You eat again if there's food left. You drink carefully rationed water that tastes worse than it did this morning. You sit when you can, leaning against the rail, watching the horizon smear into orange and gray. This is when it hits you fully. There's no off switch here. No weekend, no break. The sea doesn't care if you're tired. The ship doesn't care if you're sick. And the crew certainly doesn't care if you're still adjusting. As night falls and you lower yourself back into the dark below deck. Muscles screaming, stomach uneasy, you realize something deeply inconvenient. You didn't even make it through your second day without wishing you were somewhere else. And this constant grind, is the easy part. It's the smell that finally convinces you this life is unsustainable. Not the dramatic kind of smell you notice once and recoil from. But the constant one, the background odor that never leaves. No matter how much sea air blows across the deck. Below deck, it's worse. Damp wood, old sweat, mold, and the unmistakable presence of insects all blended together into something your nose eventually gives up trying to process. You scratch without thinking. Everyone does. Lice don't announce themselves. They just arrive. Quietly setting up a long-term relationship with your scalp and clothing. Fleas prefer the warmer areas where bodies press together at night. You tell yourself it's temporary. You tell yourself you'll wash your clothes soon. Then you remember there is no soon out here. Just saltwater rinses that don't solve much and fresh water that's too precious to waste on comfort. Your sleeping space, if it can be called that, is a narrow hammock slung between beams already claimed by someone else's feet. You climb in carefully, hoping not to brush against anything damp or crawling. You fail. Something skitters away. Offended, you lie there, swaying gently with the ship, trying not to think about what's sharing the space with you. Privacy is a myth. Bodies press close in the dark, breathing heavy, coughing, shifting. Every sound carries. Every smell intensifies. Someone groans in their sleep. Someone mutters. Someone doesn't move at all. And you wonder briefly if they're just sleeping deeply or something worse. You don't ask. Waste has to go somewhere. On a pirate ship, somewhere usually means over the side, when it's safe, or into containers that are emptied far less often than they should be. Accidents happen, slips happen, the deck is cleaned by seawater and boots. Not soap. Hygiene exists on a scale that modern you would find deeply offensive. You start to notice how quickly small cuts become big problems. A scrape on your hand stays red longer than it should. Salt water stings but doesn't disinfect the way people like to pretend it does. Without proper cleaning, minor injuries fester quietly. You keep an eye on your hands now, flexing your fingers, hoping nothing looks swollen or angry. The heat below deck is relentless. During the day, it's an oven. At night, it's a humid cave where sweat never quite dries. You wake sticky and uncomfortable. Your skin irritated, your throat dry. Breathing feels thicker down here, as if the air has been used too many times already. Historians still debate how pirate crews tolerated such conditions for so long, whether they were simply used to hardship or had no real alternatives. Some argue that compared to prisons or naval ships, pirate vessels offered slightly better treatment. Standing here, itching, cramped, and inhaling air that feels like it's been recycled through too many lungs. That comparison doesn't comfort you. You start to understand something important. Disease doesn't need to arrive dramatically. It only needs the right environment. Crowded spaces, poor hygiene, exhausted bodies. You have all three in generous supply. By morning, you're already tired again, not from work, just from existing in this floating box of discomfort. You climb back on deck, blinking in the harsh light, scratching at your neck, and wondering how long the human body can tolerate being constantly irritated. The answer, you're learning, is not as long as pirate stories suggest. And this ship, it isn't just carrying treasure and men. It's carrying every problem it will ever have, packed tightly together. Waiting its turn. You thought the food was bad before. You were wrong. A few days in, you realize that what you ate on your first night aboard was the good version. The kind served when supplies are still relatively fresh and morale hasn't completely collapsed. Now, the barrels have been opened more often, and time has started doing what time always does to food trapped in damp wood at sea. Breakfast, if that word still applies, is a biscuit so hard you consider whether it's meant to be eaten or used as a weapon. You tap it against the railing experimentally. Solid, you soak it in water until it softens just enough to bite. Then chew slowly, carefully, aware that cracking a tooth out here is not a minor inconvenience. It's a long-term problem with no solution. The meat, when it appears, arrives coated in salt thick enough to disguise what's underneath. Sometimes it's beef, sometimes it's pork, sometimes no one is entirely sure anymore. You eat it anyway, because hunger is persuasive and curiosity is dangerous. The texture is educational. The taste lingers in a way you don't appreciate. Fresh food is a memory now. No fruit, no vegetables, no herbs to distract your tongue from reality. The absence isn't just unpleasant, it's cumulative. Your body expects certain things and doesn't get them. You feel it as a low-level fatigue at first. Then as something deeper, Your gums ache slightly when you brush them with a finger. You don't mention it. You've seen what happens to people who complain too much. Water is worse. The barrels sweat in the heat. The wood swelling and shrinking as the ship moves. The water inside smells faintly of rotten metal. Sometimes there's a greenish film floating on top. You skim it away and drink anyway. Thirst wins arguments quickly. Alcohol helps, briefly. Rum dulls discomfort and makes the evening feel shorter. But it dehydrates you, leaves your mouth dry, your head thick, your patience thin. You watch men rely on it too heavily, turning minor irritation into loud arguments. Alcohol doesn't fix pirate life. It just makes you care less about how broken it is. Historians still debate how common malnutrition was among pirates compared to naval sailors. Some claim pirates ate better when raids were successful. Others point out that long stretches between victories meant slow starvation punctuated by brief excess. Living through it, the pattern feels clear. When food is unpredictable, your body never fully relaxes. You notice how quickly energy disappears. Climbing rigging takes more effort. Pulling ropes leaves your arms shaking longer than it should. You sit whenever possible, not out of laziness, but necessity. Calories are currency now, and you don't have enough. Someone jokes that at least no one gets fat at sea. The laugh that follows is thin. Humor stretched tight over discomfort. Pirate humor is like that, quick, dark, and meant to distract. As evening settles, you eat again if there's anything left. Sometimes there isn't. You swallow hard and tell yourself you'll get used to it. Humans are adaptable, right? Yes. But adaptation doesn't mean thriving. It means enduring on less than you were built for. As you lie back in your hammock, stomach never quite satisfied, you realize something uncomfortably modern. This isn't intermittent fasting for wellness. This is malnutrition with waves. And it's only just getting started. The water turns on you faster than the hunger does. You don't notice it at first, because thirst creeps in quietly, disguising itself as fatigue, as irritability, as that dull headache that never quite leaves. You drink whenever you're allowed. But the water doesn't seem to help the way it should. It fills your stomach without refreshing you, like your body knows it's being lied to. The barrels are the problem. They always are. Fresh water doesn't stay fresh for long when it's sloshing around inside aging wood. Warmed by sun and tainted by whatever lived in the barrel before it was repurposed. You peer inside one as it's opened and immediately regret being curious. The smell is faint but wrong. A combination of damp cellar and old iron. Someone shrugs and says it's fine. Someone else laughs and says you'll miss it when it's gone. You drink anyway. Everyone does. The alternative is worse. Within days, you feel it. Your mouth is dry even after drinking. Your urine darkens. Your head pounds during the hottest part of the day. You start craving water in a way that feels almost desperate. And that's when you realize how dangerous this situation is. Thirst makes people reckless. It makes them drink too fast. Too much. From sources they shouldn't. Rain becomes an event. When clouds gather, the mood on deck shifts instantly. Barrels are dragged out. Cloth is stretched to catch every drop. Men tilt their faces upward like plants. When rain finally falls, you let it hit your skin. Your mouth open, swallowing without dignity. For a brief moment, the water tastes clean, alive. It feels like mercy. Then it stops. Seawater is everywhere and useless. You know better than to drink it. But you understand why some people try. Salt dries you out from the inside, turning thirst into something sharper, more dangerous. You hear stories, half warnings, half confessions, about sailors who drank seawater and didn't stop until it was too late. No one laughs at those stories. Historians still debate how crews managed water supplies on long voyages, and whether pirates were better or worse prepared than naval ships. Some argue pirates relied heavily on raiding coastal settlements for resupply. Others suggest they simply accepted dehydration as part of life at sea. Standing here, tongue dry, head spinning slightly as the ship rolls, it feels less like strategy and more like endurance through neglect. Your body starts prioritizing badly. Muscles cramp. Your focus slips. You make small mistakes, missed knots, slower reactions that earn sharp looks. On a ship, clumsiness is dangerous, not because someone will punish you immediately, but because the sea doesn't forgive hesitation. You learn to sip, not drink, to hold water in your mouth before swallowing, tricking your body into thinking it's getting more than it is. It works a little. You learn these tricks quickly. Because everyone does. Pirate knowledge spreads fast when it's about staying alive. At night, thirst wakes you more often than cold. Your lips stick together, your throat burns slightly. You dream about fountains, streams, glasses filled to the brim. You wake frustrated, the ship creaking around you like it's mocking the idea of abundance. By now, you understand something crucial. Water is not a background detail. It's the quiet tyrant of life at sea. You can endure hunger longer than thirst. You can endure pain longer than dehydration. And this ship, this floating promise of freedom, has given you neither safety nor relief. Just enough water to keep you alive. And just little enough to remind you how close the edge really is. You don't notice the sickness arrive. You notice the normal leaving. Someone who was loud yesterday is quiet today. Someone who climbed the rigging easily now takes longer, pausing halfway up as if the rope has suddenly grown heavier. Coughs echo below deck, dry and persistent, blending with the creak of wood and the slap of waves. At first, you tell yourself it's nothing. The sea air is harsh. Everyone is tired. Everyone coughs. Then the coughs don't stop. Below deck becomes a warm, damp pocket where illness feels comfortable. The air is thick with breath and smoke and moisture, and it never fully clears. Bodies are pressed together at night, sharing heat and everything else. If one person gets sick, the ship doesn't ask permission before passing it around. Fevers come and go. Sometimes they burn hot and fast, leaving someone weak but standing. Other times they linger, slow and exhausting, draining strength day by day. There's no real medical care, no isolation, no clean bedding. The best treatment available is rest. And rest is a luxury this ship doesn't offer generously. You watch a man with a small cut on his leg limp more each day. The skin around it turns angry and swollen. Someone jokes about it being just sea rot. Whatever that means. The joke fades when the smell changes. Infection is quiet, patient, and very good at its job. Scurvy whispers its way in too. No one calls it that. Not yet, but the signs are there. Bleeding gums, teeth loosening, old wounds reopening as if the body has decided it can't afford repairs anymore. You run your tongue along your teeth sometimes. Just checking, just making sure. Historians still argue about how widespread disease was among pirate crews compared to naval ones, and whether pirates fared better or worse without formal discipline. Some claim pirates were more pragmatic about health. Others suggest chaos simply hid the true scale of sickness. Standing here, breathing air that tastes faintly of mildew and illness, the answer feels obvious. Disease thrives where neglect is routine. Injuries that would be minor on land become serious here. A slip, a splinter, a burn from hot tar, any of it can spiral. You start treating your body like fragile equipment. Not because you value it, but because there's no replacement. Pain isn't the danger, infection is. You also learn that sickness changes status. Weak men are liabilities. Not officially, no one announces it, but practically. They're watched, evaluated, helped less. If you can't pull your weight, you become a problem the crew will eventually solve. One way or another. Sleep doesn't help. Fevers turn nights into long, sweaty hallucinations. You wake unsure if you slept at all. Your head pounds. Your limbs feel hollow, like they're filled with sand instead of muscle. You still get up. You still work, because stopping is noticed. As you stand on deck one evening, watching the sun dip toward the horizon, light flickering off restless water, you realize something quietly terrifying. Out here, sickness isn't an interruption to life. It is life. And the ship is not a place that helps you heal. It's a place that waits to see whether you can endure being broken. You learn very quickly that the sea doesn't injure you politely. It doesn't do clean breaks or neat cuts that heal with time and care. It does crushing force, sudden slips, and mistakes that happen faster than thought. One moment you're pulling a line. The next the ship lurches. The rope snaps tight, and someone is screaming. You don't see the accident at first. You hear it, a sharp, animal sound that cuts through the wind and the orders being shouted. Everyone freezes for half a heartbeat, just long enough to understand what that sound means, then movement rushes in all at once. You push forward with the others and catch a glimpse of blood on the deck. Bright and shockingly alive against the grey wood. A hand is gone, not dramatically severed in battle, not heroically lost in combat, just crushed and torn by rope and wood doing what physics always does. The injured man is pale, shaking, eyes wide with a kind of disbelief that's almost worse than the pain. He keeps staring at the place where his hand used to be, as if it might return if he looks hard enough. There's no surgeon, no proper tools. Someone wraps the stump tightly. Someone else pours alcohol, not gently, over the wound. The scream that follows is quieter, hoarser, like his voice is already giving up. This is medicine at sea. Stop the bleeding. Hope for the best, and pray infection doesn't finish what the accident started. You stand there, heart racing, suddenly very aware of your own hands, your feet, your balance. You grip the railing harder than necessary, as if holding on will somehow protect you from becoming the next lesson everyone learns from. Accidents like this aren't rare. They're expected. Lines snap. Sails fall, cannons recoil, the ship moves whether you're ready or not, and the margin for error is unforgivingly small. Even experienced sailors misjudge timing sometimes. Experience reduces risk. It doesn't erase it. Historians still debate how common serious injuries were among pirate crews, and whether pirates accepted the risk differently than naval sailors. Some argue pirates were more fatalistic. more willing to gamble with their bodies. Others suggest they simply had fewer options. Watching blood being scrubbed from the deck with seawater. The distinction feels academic. Risk doesn't care how you justify it. The injured man survives the initial bleeding. That's considered a success. What happens next is less certain. Infection is a constant threat. Fever, rot, the slow kind of dying that happens while everyone pretends not to notice. If he lives, he won't be the same. A one-handed pirate has fewer uses. Everyone knows it, including him. You notice how quickly the crew returns to work. Not out of cruelty, but necessity. The ship doesn't pause for injury. The sea doesn't wait while you process trauma. Orders resume. Sails are adjusted. Life continues around the loss as if it were just another broken tool. That's what unsettles you most, not the blood, not the pain, but how ordinary it all feels to everyone else. Later, you catch sight of scars on other men. Missing fingers, limping gaits, eyes clouded from old injuries. These aren't legends. They're survivors. People who paid pieces of themselves to stay alive just a little longer. As night falls and you lie in your hammock, you flex your hands slowly, deliberately, making sure they still answer when you ask them to move. You imagine what it would be like to lose one. How quickly your value would drop. How fast sympathy would turn into calculation. And you realize something chillingly simple. On a pirate ship, injury isn't bad luck. It's a countdown. And sooner or later, everyone hears it start ticking. The smell of death doesn't arrive with ceremony. It drifts in quietly, mixing with tar, salt, and unwashed bodies until one day you realize it's always been there. At first, it's subtle, something sour that clings to the air below deck. You tell yourself it's just the ship. Old wood, old water, old everything. Then someone doesn't wake up. No announcement is made, no dramatic pause. You notice because the space where a man usually sleeps stays empty longer than it should. His hammock sways slightly with the ship's movement. Unused. Someone nudges him with a boot. No response. The crew gathers just long enough to confirm what everyone already knows. Death at sea is inconvenient. The body is carried up on deck, wrapped loosely in cloth that used to serve another purpose. You expect a moment of silence. Something solemn. Instead, there's efficiency. Weight is added. A few murmured words that feel more habitual than heartfelt. Then the body goes over the side. It disappears faster than you expect. 1 second it's there. The next, it's part of the water. The sea doesn't hesitate. It doesn't acknowledge the loss. It simply absorbs it and moves on. You stare longer than you should. Not out of grief. You didn't know him well enough for that, but out of shock at how quickly a person can be erased. No grave, no marker, no proof he was ever here beyond the empty space he left behind. The smell lingers anyway. Illness doesn't leave just because someone did. It stays in bedding, in breath, in shared air. The man who lost his hand grows quieter, feverish. The wound smells wrong. You know that smell now. Everyone does. No one says it out loud. Historians still debate how pirate crews handled death psychologically, whether they grew numb to it or ritualized it in private ways. Some accounts suggest songs and drinks. Others suggest silence. Living through it, you realize the truth is less tidy. People cope however they can. And often, they don't cope at all. You start counting, not intentionally, but reflexively. Who's coughing more? Who's limping? Who hasn't eaten much? It's a habit you don't like, but you can't stop. Awareness feels like a form of control, even when it isn't. The sea grows rougher over the next few days, and the ship groans under the strain. Waves slap hard against the hull, sending sprays of cold water across the deck. You welcome it at first. It washes away grime, cools your skin. Then the wind picks up, and the cold cuts deeper. Wet clothes stay wet. Shivering becomes constant. Death doesn't need violence to do its work. Sometimes it just waits until you're tired, sick, cold, and unlucky enough to be noticed by nothing at all. That night, as the ship rocks and the darkness presses in, you listen to the breathing around you. You notice the gaps, the uneven rhythm, the silence where a sound should be. And you understand something with quiet clarity. Out here, death isn't dramatic. It's routine. And the scariest part is how quickly you're starting to accept that. The storm doesn't announce itself with thunder or drama. It begins with a change in the wind, subtle, almost polite, like the sea clearing its throat before saying something unpleasant. The horizon blurs, the line between sky and water smudging into a darker shade of gray. You notice the crew tense before you understand why. Conversations stop, movements sharpen. This isn't fear yet, it's recognition. Orders come faster now, short, sharp. You scramble to keep up, hands slipping on wet rope as the ship starts to roll more aggressively beneath your feet. Waves grow taller, heavier, each one slamming into the hull with enough force to rattle your teeth. The deck tilts at angles that feel wrong, and your body struggles to adjust. Balance becomes a constant negotiation. Rain arrives sideways, needling your skin, soaking you through in minutes. Your clothes cling, heavy and cold. The wind howls loud enough to swallow voices whole. You can't hear commands unless they're shouted directly into your ear. And even then, you're guessing half the time. Guessing is dangerous, but hesitation is worse. You cling to whatever you can, railings, ropes, the ship itself, while the world turns chaotic around you. Barrels shift, loose objects slide and crash. Someone stumbles and barely catches themselves before the sea tries to claim them. You realize how thin the boundary is between, on the ship, and, gone forever. There's no shelter from this. No place to hide. Below deck is worse, dark, airless, violent with motion. Above deck, the storm has free access to you. You choose the lesser misery and stay where you are, muscles screaming as you brace against the wind. Historians still debate how often pirate ships were lost to storms compared to battle, and whether sailors feared the sea more than enemy cannons. Some records suggest storms were the greatest killer of all. Standing here, rain blinding you, hands numb, you don't debate it. You understand it. Hours stretch in ways that feel unreal. Time loses meaning when survival is reduced to holding on. You stop thinking about tomorrow. You stop thinking about anything beyond the next wave. The sea doesn't care how tired you are. It doesn't care how sick or hungry you've been. It just keeps coming. Eventually, without fanfare, the storm loosens its grip. The wind drops from a scream to a growl. The rain thins. The waves settle into something merely dangerous instead of actively hostile. You don't feel relief right away. You feel empty, drained, like the storm took something with it that you won't get back. The deck is a mess. Ropes tangled, equipment damaged, people bruised, bleeding, shaken. One man is missing. No one says his name. Everyone knows where he went. As you lean against the rail, soaked and shaking, watching the sea calm as if nothing happened, you realize something deeply unfair. You did everything right. And it still almost killed you. That's when it truly sinks in. Out here, courage doesn't matter. Skill only helps sometimes. The sea decides when you're done. And it never explains why. Sleep stops feeling like rest and starts feeling like exposure. You don't ease into it anymore. You collapse into it. Wherever your body finally gives in. Even then, part of you stays alert, tuned to the creaks and groans of the ship. The sudden shouts that can yank you upright without warning. On a pirate vessel, night isn't peace. It's just work with fewer witnesses. You curl into your space below deck, knees tucked, trying to make yourself smaller so you don't get stepped on. The air is thick, warm, and sour. Someone snores nearby. Someone else mutters in their sleep. You hear the faint scuttle of something alive and unbothered by your presence. You don't investigate. Experience has already taught you that curiosity rarely improves things here. Every movement of the ship travels straight through the wood and into your bones. When the hull creaks sharply, your heart jumps. Is it just the ship settling? Or something worse? You don't know. You won't know until it's already happening. That uncertainty keeps your muscles tight even when you're exhausted. You wake often, sometimes because the ship shifts suddenly, sometimes because someone stumbles past, sometimes for no reason you can identify at all. You check yourself automatically, hands, legs, breath, making sure everything still works. This has become routine, a nightly inventory of survival. There's danger in sleep here. Fires can spread, storms can rise, fights can break out, mutinies, rare, but never impossible, prefer darkness. You've heard the stories, even if no one tells them directly. The idea that someone might decide tonight is the night keeps your mind half awake. Listening for changes in tone, in footsteps, in silence. Historians still debate how pirate crews managed watch schedules and nighttime security, and whether pirates slept more lightly than other sailors. Some accounts suggest rotating watches, others imply chaos and trust in shared self-interest. Lying here, eyes closed but mind racing. You suspect the truth is simpler: everyone sleeps badly, and everyone hopes it's enough. Dreams, when they come, are strange and sharp. You dream of falling, of drowning, of endless decks that never reach shore. You wake with your heart pounding, breath shallow, the smell of damp wood grounding you back in reality. Relief doesn't last. Reality isn't much better. By morning, you're more tired than when you lay down. Your body feels heavy, slow to respond. Your patience is thin. You drink stale water and eat whatever passes for food. And you go back on deck, pretending you slept just fine. Everyone does this. It's part of the performance. You realize something quietly devastating. Fatigue is no longer temporary. It's structural, built into the life you chose, or were pushed into. Rest isn't something you earn. It's something you steal in fragments and hope adds up to enough. As the sun rises, pale and unhelpful, you squint against the light and brace yourself for another day you're not fully awake for. And you understand that on this ship, even sleep is unsafe. Which means there is nowhere, not even in your own mind, where you're truly off duty. The rules appear slowly, like bruises you don't remember earning. No one gathers the crew to explain them. No parchment is read aloud. You learn them the way everyone does, by watching what happens when someone breaks one. At first, you assume pirates must be chaotic by nature, lawless, free. That illusion lasts until the first punishment. A man argues too loudly. Another questions an order at the wrong moment. The response is immediate and calm in a way that's far more frightening than shouting. The crew forms a loose circle. No one intervenes. No one looks surprised. Discipline on a pirate ship isn't constant. But when it arrives, it's precise. You watch as punishment is decided quickly, without debate. Sometimes it's extra work. Sometimes it's loss of rations. Sometimes it's physical, and everyone pretends not to listen too closely. Pain becomes part of the correction. Not out of cruelty, but deterrence. Order has to be maintained. And fear is cheaper than mercy. You realize something unsettling. Pirates don't reject rules. They reject external rules. What they create instead is a code shaped entirely by survival. Obey orders. Pull your weight. Don't steal from the crew. Don't endanger the ship. Break those rules. And the consequences are immediate because hesitation invites chaos. Historians still debate how formal pirate codes really were, whether they were consistently enforced agreements or flexible traditions that varied by crew. Some point to written articles signed before voyages. Others argue most discipline was situational, watching punishment unfold in front of you. The nuance doesn't matter. What matters is that enforcement is swift, public, and memorable. You adjust your behavior quickly. You speak less. You watch more. You time your words carefully, choosing silence whenever possible. Silence is rarely punished. Mistakes are. Alcohol doesn't soften discipline. It sharpens it. Drunkenness might be tolerated until it interferes with work or respect. When it does, tolerance evaporates. You see a man lose his share for a week over something that would have earned a warning on land. Out here, warnings are expensive. There's a strange fairness to it. Too, rank exists, but not the way you expect. Authority comes from competence and reputation. A captain who risks the ship loses loyalty fast. A crew that senses weakness becomes restless. Discipline is as much about keeping leadership intact as it is about controlling the lowest deckhand. At night, you replay the scene in your head. The quiet acceptance, the lack of protest. You understand now why punishment doesn't spark rebellion, it's too normalized. Everyone has agreed, implicitly, that order is worth the cost. As you lie there, listening to the ship breathe around you, you feel a tightening in your chest. Not fear exactly, awareness. You are not free here. You are managed, corrected, watched. And you realize that on a pirate ship, discipline isn't the opposite of freedom. It's the price you pay for pretending you have any at all. Rum is everywhere, and it takes you a while to realize that this isn't generosity, it's strategy. At first, you're grateful for it. The burn in your throat is familiar, grounding, a brief reminder of a world where comfort could still be poured into a cup. A swallow warms you faster than food ever does. It dulls the ache in your muscles and blurs the constant edge of discomfort. For a moment, the ship feels almost manageable. That moment doesn't last. Alcohol moves through the crew like a second tide. Predictable and dangerous. It loosens tongues long before it loosens pain. Jokes turn sharper. Grievances that were carefully swallowed during the day float back to the surface at night. You watch conversations drift from harmless complaints to accusations with alarming speed. Fueled by cheap rum and exhaustion. You learn quickly that drinking isn't optional in the way you might think. Refusing too often draws attention. Attention invites questions. Questions invite conclusions about trust and loyalty. So you drink, pacing yourself, trying to stay just sober enough to notice when things start to tilt. The problem is that rum solves the wrong things. It doesn't fix hunger. It doesn't fix sickness. It doesn't fix fear. It just makes you less capable of dealing with them. Men stumble on deck. Arguments flare. Someone laughs too loudly at the wrong moment and gets shoved for it. Alcohol doesn't create violence here, it reveals it. Historians still debate how central alcohol really was to pirate life, and whether it functioned more as morale booster or control mechanism. Some accounts romanticize endless drinking. Others describe strict rationing, living inside it. The truth feels simpler. Rum is a tool. It keeps people numb enough to endure conditions that would otherwise break them. You notice how drinking patterns mirror survival patterns. The weakest drink the most. The angriest drink the fastest. The cautious drink sparingly, watching the room instead of their cups. You try to be one of the cautious ones. But fatigue makes judgment slippery. One night, a fight breaks out over nothing. Literally nothing anyone can remember afterward. A spilled cup. A misunderstood glance. Fists fly before words can correct themselves. The crew intervenes quickly, dragging the men apart. But the damage is done. Bruises bloom. Pride shatters. Tomorrow's work will be harder for everyone. You sit apart, cup in hand, watching the liquid slosh inside. You think about how modern you might unwind with a drink after a long day. Joking about needing one to relax. The comparison feels absurd now. This isn't relaxation, it's sedation. As the night wears on, voices grow quieter, then sloppier. Some men pass out where they sit. Others grow melancholy, staring into nothing, haunted by thoughts alcohol refuses to drown. The ship creaks, steady and indifferent, carrying all of you forward whether you're conscious or not. When you finally lie down, the room spins gently in a way the sea never quite manages on its own. Your mouth is dry, your head throbs. Sleep comes quickly but shallowly, full of jagged dreams. In the morning, you wake feeling worse than you did before you drank. And that's when it becomes clear. Rum isn't a blessing. It's a way to survive today by borrowing misery from tomorrow. Violence doesn't arrive as a surprise anymore. It arrives as background noise. You start noticing it in the way people move around one another, carefully. Angled slightly away, hands never quite relaxed. Conversations are polite on the surface. But there's a tension underneath them. Like a rope pulled too tight. Everyone knows everyone else is tired, hungry, half drunk, and trapped on the same moving slab of wood. That knowledge changes how disagreements behave. Arguments don't escalate loudly at first. They sharpen. A comment lingers a second too long. A joke lands wrong. Someone laughs. But no one joins in. You feel the temperature drop. Even under the sun, you learn to step back when that happens. To become suddenly very interested in anything else. Fights break out over space more than anything. A foot in the wrong place. A hammock shifted. A barrel leaned on without permission. Out here, personal space is a resource. And resources are worth defending. You watch a shove turn into fists in seconds. bodies colliding hard against the rail as the ship rolls beneath them. The crew intervenes, but not gently. Violence is discouraged only when it threatens order. Broken noses heal. Broken discipline does not. The message is clear. Hurt each other if you must, but don't endanger the ship. Historians still debate how common internal violence was among pirate crews, and whether it exceeded that of merchant or naval vessels. Some sources suggest pirates were unusually democratic, resolving disputes through votes or codes. Others point out that democracy doesn't eliminate aggression, it just decides when it's tolerated. Watching bruises form under the hot sun. The debate feels distant. Pain is present. That's enough. You feel the edge in yourself too. Irritation flares faster than it should. Sounds annoy you. Touches linger unpleasantly. Hunger and fatigue strip away patience until emotion reacts before thought can intervene. You catch yourself clenching your jaw, fists tightening without a reason you can name. This scares you more than the violence around you, because it means the ship isn't just dangerous. It's contagious. At night, voices rise and fall below deck. Arguments flare, then collapse into exhausted silence. Sometimes you hear someone crying quietly, trying not to be heard. Other times you hear laughter that sounds a little unhinged. Both are signs of the same thing, pressure looking for release. You think about how modern you might handle conflict, with space, with cooling off periods, with the option to walk away. None of that exists here. You can't leave the room. You can't take a break. You can't remove yourself from the people who annoy or threaten you. The ship forces intimacy, and intimacy under stress breeds conflict. As you lie there, listening to the ship creak and the sea hiss against the hull, you understand something important. This life doesn't just expose violence. It manufactures it. And sooner or later, everyone aboard becomes capable of something they wouldn't recognize in themselves on land. Including you. The isolation sneaks up on you, disguised as routine. At first, the sea felt vast and open, almost comforting in its endlessness. Now it feels like a wall, smooth, blue, and completely uninterested in your feelings. Every direction looks the same. Every horizon promises nothing new. You realize you haven't seen land in so long that the idea of it feels theoretical. Days pass without markers. No streets. No rooms. No private corners where your thoughts can stretch out. The ship is always there, pressing in, reminding you that this is the entirety of your world now. A few 100 feet of wood and rope, floating between places that may or may not exist anymore. You miss silence, not the quiet you get at night below deck, that's crowded with breathing and movement, but real silence. The kind that lets your mind wander without being interrupted by orders or arguments or the groan of timbers. Here, there's always something demanding your attention, even when nothing is happening. The ship insists on being heard. Loneliness hits differently in a crowd. You're never alone, yet you feel unseen. Conversations stay shallow, practical. No one asks how you're doing unless it affects your ability to work. Friendship exists, but it's fragile, temporary, built around shared survival rather than shared understanding. You don't confide much. Neither does anyone else. Historians still debate the psychological toll of long sea voyages, especially among pirates who lack the structure of naval discipline. Some argue the freedom made it easier. Others suggest it made the isolation worse. Standing here, staring at a horizon that refuses to change. You feel the weight of that second argument settle in. Your thoughts start looping. Small worries replay themselves endlessly because there's nowhere to put them. You think about home, not in detail, but in flashes. A doorway, a familiar sound, the feeling of standing still on solid ground. These memories don't comfort you. They ache. You notice how people cope. Some talk constantly, filling the air so their thoughts don't get too loud. Others withdraw completely, staring out to sea for hours as if waiting for it to answer back. A few carve little rituals into the day, cleaning the same spot, tying and retying knots, anything to impose order on the emptiness. At night, you lie in your hammock, eyes open, watching darkness press in from all sides. The ship creaks softly, alive in a way that feels almost mocking. You're surrounded by people, yet profoundly alone with your thoughts. And that's when it becomes clear. Pirate life doesn't just wear down the body. It isolates the mind. And once the mind starts turning inward with nowhere to escape, surviving becomes less about strength, and more about how long you can keep yourself company without breaking. The idea of freedom was supposed to be the reward. That's what the stories promised. The wind in your hair. No masters. No rules. Just open sea and open choice. Somewhere along the way, that idea quietly dissolves, and you don't even notice the exact moment it happens. You realize it one afternoon while hauling a line you didn't choose to haul. At a speed you didn't set. Under orders you didn't question. Your body moves on instinct now, trained by repetition and fear of consequence. The ship decides when you wake, when you work, when you eat, when you sleep. The sea decides everything else. Freedom, it turns out, has very little room to exist between those two forces. You watch the officers and senior crew closely, hoping to spot the advantage you're missing. Surely they feel freer than you do. Surely they've earned something better. But they're just as trapped, by reputation, by expectation, by the constant need to maintain control. A captain can't rest. A quartermaster can't relax. Authority here isn't comfort. It's responsibility sharpened into a weapon. Historians still debate whether pirate life truly offered more freedom than naval or merchant service. Some argue pirates chose their leaders and divided spoils more equally. Others point out that choice loses meaning when the alternative is starvation or execution. Watching the chain of command operate smoothly and relentlessly, you begin to suspect that freedom was always a marketing term. You think about modern freedom, choosing what to eat, where to go, who to speak to, when to be alone. You didn't appreciate how many small choices made life feel livable. Out here, choice is rationed more tightly than water. You can choose how hard you work, but not whether you work. You can choose how quietly you suffer, but not whether you suffer. Even leisure is scheduled by exhaustion. When work pauses, you don't explore hobbies or dreams. You sit, you stare, you recover just enough to stand up again. The ship doesn't care how you feel about it. It only cares that you're functional. You hear someone joke that pirates are the freest men alive. The laugh that follows is strained, practiced. No one challenges it, because challenging the idea would mean admitting something uncomfortable, that this life is all constraint, just wrapped in a different story. As evening settles and the sun sinks into the water, you lean against the rail, watching light fracture across waves you'll never control. The horizon looks wide, but your world feels small. narrow, carefully bounded by wood, rope, and necessity. That's when the truth finally lands. Heavy and undeniable. Pirate life doesn't take your freedom all at once. It trades it away, piece by piece, until one day you realize you don't remember what having it felt like anymore. You don't get a heroic build-up to your first fight. There's no swelling music, no moment where everyone locks eyes and nods like they're about to become legends. Combat at sea begins with confusion. A shape on the horizon. A shouted order. The ship turning hard beneath your feet as sails are adjusted with frantic speed. Your stomach drops before the first shot is fired. The enemy ship, merchant, navy, or something equally desperate, grows larger with uncomfortable speed. You can hear it before you can make out details, the creak of wood, the snap of sails, the faint echo of voices carried over water. Everyone moves faster now, but not cleaner. Tension turns efficiency sloppy. Ropes tangle. Someone drops a tool and swears. Another man laughs too loudly. The sound brittle and wrong. Cannons are readied. You help where you're told. Hands shaking as you pass powder and shot. Aware that one mistake here doesn't just hurt you, it rearranges everyone nearby. The smell of gunpowder creeps in early, sharp and metallic, making your eyes sting. You realize you've been holding your breath. The first cannon fires, and the sound hits you in the chest like a physical blow. Your ears ring instantly. The deck shudders beneath you. Wood screaming in protest. Smoke blooms thick and fast, turning the world into a gray blur where distance collapses and direction becomes guesswork. This is where the stories lie the most. There's no clear sense of who's winning. No dramatic arcs. Just noise, smoke, shouting, and movement in every direction at once. You run when you're told. You stop when you're told. Sometimes you move because everyone else is moving and standing still feels worse. Time fragments into short, panicked moments. Shots tear through sails. Wood splinters violently. Shards flying with enough force to maim. A man near you goes down, not dead. Not even obviously wounded, just knocked flat by the chaos of it all. He doesn't get up right away. No one checks on him. Then comes boarding. The ships grind together with a sound like teeth breaking. Grappling hooks bite into railings. Ropes are thrown, secured, pulled tight. Suddenly the enemy isn't distant anymore. They're right there, faces flushed, eyes wide, expressions stripped of story and reduced to survival. Close combat is worse than you imagined. There's no room to swing properly. No elegant duels. Bodies crash together in narrow spaces. Weapons used at awkward angles. You smell sweat, blood, smoke, and fear all at once. Someone shoves past you hard enough to knock the air from your lungs. You stumble, catch yourself, and keep moving because stopping feels like a death sentence. You don't fight bravely, you fight clumsily. Instinct takes over, untrained and panicked. You swing when someone lunges. You block without knowing how. You move because standing still would mean being trampled or stabbed by accident. Survival here isn't about skill, it's about being missed. Historians still debate how effective pirates really were in battle, and whether their reputation was built more on intimidation than actual combat prowess. Some argue pirates preferred to scare ships into surrendering rather than fight. Others point to bloody engagements that left decks slick with loss. Standing in the middle of it, vision blurred by smoke and adrenaline, You understand why intimidation was preferred. This is exhausting, terrifying, uncontrolled. Someone screams. Someone laughs hysterically. Someone stops moving entirely. You can't tell who's winning. You're not even sure which bodies belong to which ship anymore. Identity dissolves quickly when survival is all that matters. Eventually, somehow, it ends. Not cleanly, not clearly. The noise fades into ragged breathing and the slap of water against hulls. Smoke drifts away just enough to reveal damage, torn sails, broken railings, bodies slumped where they fell. Some groan, some don't. You stand there, hands shaking, weapon still in your grip because you don't remember putting it down. Your ears ring, your mouth tastes like metal. You look around, trying to count who's still standing, and realize you don't actually want to know. Victory doesn't feel like triumph. It feels like relief laced with horror. Losses are assessed quickly, practically. The dead are moved aside. The wounded are evaluated for usefulness before compassion. Loot is collected with mechanical focus, as if efficiency might erase what just happened. Later, much later, you sit apart, staring at your hands. They look the same. They don't feel the same. You replay moments without order, without context. A face, a sound, a body falling. Your mind struggles to file the experience into anything that makes sense. That's when the final truth of pirate combat settles in. You didn't survive because you were brave. You didn't survive because you were skilled. You survived because chaos is selective in ways it never explains. And next time, because there will be a next time, you might not be chosen again. The silence after the fight is worse than the noise that came before it. Your ears are still ringing, but underneath that is a heavy quiet. The kind that presses down on your thoughts and makes everything feel unreal. Smoke drifts lazily across the deck, carrying the sharp scent of gunpowder and something darker, coppery, that you don't need to identify anymore. You step carefully now, not because you're tired, though you are, but because you've learned what careless movement can cost. The deck is littered with debris, splintered wood, torn rope, dropped weapons, and bodies. Some are alive, curled inward, groaning softly. Others are still in a way that tells you everything you need to know. Wounds are assessed quickly, not kindly. Someone with a deep cut is wrapped tightly and told to stay conscious. Someone else with a crushed leg is stared at for a moment too long before a decision is made without words. You realize that survival here isn't just about living through the fight, it's about being worth keeping alive afterward. You watch as injuries are treated with whatever is available. Cloth, alcohol, pressure, no anesthesia, no real pain relief. The injured grit their teeth, scream, or go frighteningly quiet. There's no time to be gentle. Infection will come later, right now. Stopping the bleeding is the priority. Historians still debate how pirate crews handled wounded men after battle, and whether they were more ruthless or more practical than naval forces. Some accounts suggest pirates shared spoils more equally to compensate for injury. Others suggest wounded men were quietly abandoned at the next port. Standing here, watching blood soak into wood already darkened by countless other battles, you understand the logic behind both. The dead are handled even faster. There's no ceremony beyond necessity. Bodies are moved aside, identified if possible, and prepared for the sea. You avert your eyes when one is rolled toward the rail, not out of squeamishness, But because recognition would make it harder, you've learned that distance is a survival skill. When the body goes overboard, the splash is smaller than you expect. The sea accepts it without comment. You find yourself staring at the ripples long after they fade, wondering how many people the ocean has taken without ever being noticed. Later, the ship resumes its routines with unsettling speed. Sails are repaired, weapons cleaned, food redistributed. Life reorganizes itself around the damage instead of stopping for it. You help where you can. Hands moving on autopilot, mind still trying to catch up. That night, exhaustion hits harder than it ever has before. Your body finally understands what it's been through and demands payment. You lie down below deck, muscles trembling, mind replaying fragments of the fight in no particular order. Sleep comes, but it's thin and crowded with images you didn't invite. You wake suddenly, heart racing, convinced you heard shouting. It's just the ship settling, just the sea. You lie there in the dark, breathing slowly, trying to convince yourself that what happened is over. But you know better now. Pirate battles don't end when the fighting stops. They linger, in wounds that won't heal properly, in crew members who are suddenly missing, in the quiet knowledge that next time, the chaos might choose differently. And as you stare into the darkness, one thought settles in with uncomfortable clarity. You survived the fight. Now you have to survive what comes after it. Being captured isn't loud. It doesn't come with a dramatic last stand or a shouted curse swallowed by the wind. It happens quietly, usually after everything else has already gone wrong. A ship damaged too badly to run. A crew thinned too far to fight again. A moment where luck, already stretched thin, finally snaps. You hear stories first. Always stories. Pirates taken alive, paraded through ports in chains. Pirates who thought surrender might mean mercy, only to discover that mercy is expensive and rarely extended to people who made a living terrifying others. The stories are told casually, almost conversationally, which somehow makes them worse. You imagine it happening to you. The fight ends differently. The smoke clears and you're not standing on your own deck anymore. Hands bind your wrists tightly, rope biting into skin already raw. Weapons are taken. Names don't matter. You're cargo now, not a person. Ports look different from this angle. Where once they meant food, water, and brief relief, now they mean eyes, lots of them, watching, judging, deciding what you're worth. Crowds gather quickly. Pirates are familiar enough to be hated and rare enough to be interesting. You become a lesson on legs. Historians still debate how often pirates were actually captured versus killed outright, and whether authorities preferred executions as deterrence or imprisonment as spectacle. Some records suggest leniency in exchange for information. Others describe swift trials with outcomes decided long before anyone spoke. Standing there in irons, you wouldn't care which interpretation is correct. You'd care about how tight the chains are and how long you'll have to wear them. Imprisonment isn't restful. Cells are cold, damp, crowded, and designed to remind you that your life no longer belongs to you. Food is minimal, water questionable, disease moves freely through confined spaces. Just like it did on the ship, only now. You can't go on deck for air or light. The walls close in fast. Execution, when it comes, isn't always immediate. Sometimes it's delayed, announced in advance like an event. A warning. You hear about pirates hanged at harbor mouths. Bodies left on display so sailors can't miss the message. It's not about justice. It's about discouragement. You think about how quickly pirate legends skip this part. The capture, the waiting, the humiliation. Stories prefer bold escapes or dramatic deaths at sea. They rarely linger on men sitting in chains, listening to footsteps outside their cell, wondering which day will be their last. As you lie awake, whether on a ship, in a cell, or simply in fear of both, you understand something the stories never emphasize. Being a pirate doesn't mean dying in battle. More often, it means surviving long enough to be punished for it. And if you're honest with yourself, this might be the ending you fear most, not because it's violent, but because it strips away the last illusion. The illusion that you were ever in control. Even the places that are supposed to feel safe don't. Not really. Pirate havens, those half-mythical ports whispered about in taverns, sound comforting in theory. Places where ships like yours can anchor without immediate fear of cannons or gallows. Places where no one asks too many questions, because everyone already knows the answers. When you finally reach one, the relief is brief. From a distance, the harbor looks welcoming enough. Ships clustered together, masts bobbing gently, the smell of smoke and cooking drifting across the water. Land, solid, unmoving land. Your legs ache in anticipation of standing still again, of feeling ground that doesn't sway beneath you. For a moment, you let yourself believe this is what safety feels like. Then you step ashore. The ground is uneven, crowded, loud. Voices overlap in a dozen languages. None of them gentle. The air smells like sweat, alcohol, rotting food, and desperation. Pirate havens aren't orderly ports, they're pressure valves. Places where lawlessness piles up because it has nowhere else to go. You're not anonymous here, not really. Everyone watches everyone else, eyes sharp, calculating. Who's wounded? Who's drunk? Who looks new? Who looks weak? The same instincts that kept you alive at sea are very much active on land. Just redirected. Historians still debate how safe pirate havens actually were, whether they functioned as genuine communities or merely temporary shelters built on mutual tolerance. Some accounts describe bustling markets and loose alliances. Others emphasize violence, theft, and betrayal as common features. Standing here, purse clutched close, shoulders tense, you suspect both are true. Safety exists, but it's conditional and fragile. Alcohol flows freely, too freely. Taverns spill noise and bodies into the streets. Laughter loud and brittle. Fights break out with alarming speed. Often over misunderstandings no one remembers starting. You see men you recognize from ships stagger past, bruised and bleeding, already burning through their share of loot as if it might evaporate if they don't spend it fast enough. Disease doesn't respect land any more than it respected the ship. Crowded rooms, shared cups, questionable water, it's all here. Just rearranged. You hear coughing everywhere. You notice how many people limp. How many have scars that never healed right. Survival didn't make them whole. It just made him present. Even rest feels risky. You sleep lightly, one eye half open, belongings tucked close. You don't trust doors. You don't trust strangers. You don't fully trust people you've sailed with for weeks. Pirate havens remove one danger, the immediate threat of the gallows, but replace it with dozens of smaller ones. When it's time to leave, you feel a strange mix of relief and dread. relief to escape the tension of the streets, dread to return to the sea. That's when it hits you. There is no environment where you truly relax anymore. Sea or land, danger just changes costumes. As your ship pulls away from the harbor, you watch the shoreline recede, already aware that whatever comfort you felt there was temporary. Pirate havens aren't sanctuaries. They're reminders that nowhere in this life is designed to keep you safe for long. And the longer you stay in it, the harder it becomes to imagine anywhere else. Betrayal doesn't explode, it seeps. You expect treachery to look dramatic, raised voices, drawn blades, a sudden, obvious turn. Instead, it begins as a feeling you can't quite place. Conversations stop when you approach. Glances linger a second too long. Someone remembers a detail differently than you do, and no one bothers correcting them. On a ship this crowded, secrecy feels impossible, until it isn't. Trust here is transactional. You trade it for effort, for loyalty in the moment, for silence when silence is convenient. But it has a short shelf life. Hunger, fear, and greed all work against it. Wearing it thin day by day, you learn to keep your expectations small. That helps. It doesn't save you. It starts with the spoils. After a raid, shares are counted and recounted. Fingers tapping, eyes narrowing. Someone suggests a redistribution. Someone else agrees too quickly. The math works, technically, but it feels wrong. You can't explain why. You just know that when resources tighten, fairness becomes flexible. Historians still debate how equitable pirate profit-sharing truly was, whether codes protected the common sailor or merely gave the appearance of justice. Some accounts praise pirates as unusually egalitarian. Others note that power has a way of bending rules even in democracies built on desperation. Watching the numbers change hands, you suspect the truth depends on who's holding the ledger. Betrayal also wears uniforms you don't expect. A whispered word to an officer, a delayed warning, a decision not to wake someone in time for watch. None of these look like treason alone. Together, they tilt outcomes. Accidents happen more easily when someone decides not to prevent them. You catch yourself guarding information. Not secrets, just thoughts. Complaints. Plans. Even casual observations feel like things better kept to yourself. You've learned that words travel fast and return sharpened. Silence, again, feels safer. At night, below deck, you listen to breathing and try to remember when camaraderie felt genuine. It did, once, early on, before the stakes escalated, before survival became competitive. You realize that shared danger can unite people, but prolonged danger eventually turns unity into calculus. There's a moment, quiet, forgettable on the surface, when you understand that if something went wrong tomorrow, not everyone would try to save you. Some would, some wouldn't. A few might benefit if you didn't make it. That knowledge settles in your chest, heavy and cold. You adjust. You work harder. You keep your head down. You stay useful. Usefulness buys time here. It doesn't buy loyalty, but it delays replacement. In a world with no safety net, that's as close to security as you'll get. As the ship cuts forward through indifferent water, you accept a final, uncomfortable truth about pirate life. The greatest danger isn't the navy. It isn't the storm. It isn't even the sea. It's the person beside you, doing the same math you are, and deciding they might be better off without you. Money stops feeling real out here. Not all at once, just gradually. The way salt works into everything given enough time. You still hear numbers thrown around after a successful raid. Shares counted, coins weighed, promises made about what it will all buy once you reach the right port. But the longer you stay at sea, the more abstract those promises become. You carry your share in a small pouch, feeling its weight occasionally as if that proves something. Gold and silver clink softly when the ship moves. A sound that should be comforting. Instead, it makes you uneasy. Wealth on a pirate ship doesn't mean comfort. It doesn't mean safety. It doesn't even mean food. It just means you're carrying something other people might decide they want more than you do. You notice how quickly money disappears once land is involved. In pirate havens, coins flow out of hands as fast as they flowed in. Food, drink, shelter, gambling, bribes, repairs, everything costs more than it should. Because everyone knows pirates don't plan long term. Why save when tomorrow might not come? The logic is flawed, but it's contagious. Historians still debate whether piracy was ever truly profitable for the average crew member, or whether the legends were built on rare successes exaggerated over time. Some records suggest most pirates died poor, regardless of how much they briefly held. Sitting here, pouch heavier than your stomach, you begin to understand how that could be true. At sea, money can't buy relief. It can't buy rest. It can't buy medical care when you need it most. It can't buy protection from storms or sickness or a crew member's bad mood. It just sits there, inert, waiting for a future that keeps getting postponed. You also learn that wealth makes you visible. People notice who has a full pouch and who doesn't. They remember. They calculate. Money changes how arguments unfold, how alliances shift. A well-timed loan buys favor. A refusal buys resentment. Either way, your coins become social tools whether you want them to or not. You think about modern money, digital numbers, cards, savings accounts, and how distance makes wealth feel safer. Out here, wealth is physical, portable, stealable. It doesn't hide behind institutions. It rides in your pocket, announcing itself with every step. One night, you consider spending it all the next time you dock. Not out of joy, but out of fear. Better empty pockets than tempting ones. Better memories than targets. The thought feels rational in a way that would have shocked you before this life. As you lie awake, listening to the ship cut steadily through water, you realize something quietly deflating. Pirate treasure doesn't change your odds. It doesn't buy you time. It doesn't buy you mercy. It just gives you one more thing to lose. And in a life already defined by loss. That's not the advantage the stories promised you. You start to feel older than you should. Not in a dignified, seasoned way, but in the way your body argues with you every morning. Joints complain when you stand. Muscles protest work they once handled without comment. Small pains linger instead of fading, settling in like they've decided to stay. Life at sea ages you fast. Sun burns your skin daily. Salt dries it until it cracks. And wind scours it raw. You can feel it when you touch your face, rougher, tighter, less forgiving. You catch your reflection in a bit of polished metal one afternoon and barely recognize yourself. The eyes are the strangest part. They look narrower, not physically, just practiced, less curious. Your hands tell the story clearly. Calluses split and heal badly. Old blisters leave thick scars. Fingernails break, catch, tear. You treat them carefully now, because even a small infection could turn serious. Your body isn't resilient anymore, it's managed. Historians still debate how quickly sailors aged during long sea voyages, and whether pirate life accelerated physical decline compared to other maritime work. Some argue hardship toughened men. Others note shortened lifespans and chronic injury. Standing here, stretching a shoulder that never quite loosens, you suspect both are true. You're tougher and more worn out at the same time. Illness doesn't fully leave, even when you feel better. It lingers in reduced strength, in breath that comes a little shorter, in stamina that never quite returns. You learn to pace yourself instinctively, saving energy for when it matters. Youth, it turns out, is something you spend quickly out here. You notice the same thing in others. Men who looked powerful weeks ago now move more carefully. Laughter sounds older. Complaints grow quieter, not because things hurt less, but because everyone has learned which pains are permanent. There's a shared understanding that recovery is partial at best. This aging isn't just physical. Your patience is shorter. Your tolerance for nonsense is gone. You don't dream much anymore. The future feels like a fog you don't bother staring into. You focus on tasks, on today, on staying useful. That mindset keeps you alive, but it narrows your world. At night, when you lie down and your body finally stops moving, aches bloom everywhere at once. You breathe through them, waiting for sleep to dull the edges. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Either way, morning comes too soon. That's when it becomes clear. Pirate life doesn't wait for you to grow old. It pushes you there, hard and fast, until the body you brought aboard no longer exists. And once your body starts failing faster than your luck, this life has a very simple solution. It replaces you. There's a moment, quiet, almost boring, when you realize no one expects you to last forever. Not the crew, not the captain, not even you. Pirate life doesn't plan for longevity. It plans for replacement. Every role on this ship exists because someone else once filled it and then didn't. You notice how new faces are discussed. Not with welcome, but assessment. Strong enough, quick learner, doesn't complain too much. These aren't compliments. They're criteria. You've heard people talk about you the same way. When they thought you weren't listening. You don't take it personally. You can't afford to. Your usefulness is constantly measured. Can you climb? Can you pull? Can you fight when needed? Can you do it without slowing others down? The moment the answer to any of those questions becomes uncertain, your position weakens. There's no formal firing, no goodbye. Just a gradual shift in expectations until you're doing less important work, or no work at all. Historians still debate how pirate crews dealt with aging or injured members, and whether loyalty extended beyond usefulness. Some stories suggest crews supported their own, at least briefly. Others imply men were left behind at ports or quietly pushed out, watching the way attention drifts away from those who can't keep up. You suspect kindness existed, but only within limits. You see it happen to someone else first. A man who used to be reliable starts slowing down. His reactions lag. He asks for help more often. Nothing dramatic, just a steady decline. At first, people adjust around him, then they stop. He's given easier tasks, then fewer tasks, then none at all. No one confronts him. No one explains what's happening. One day, when the ship docks, he doesn't come back. Maybe he chose to stay behind. Maybe he was encouraged. The distinction doesn't really matter. The ship sails on without him, lighter in more ways than one. You imagine that future for yourself, not as a tragedy, but as an inevitability. The ship doesn't owe you a place. It never did. You were always temporary. Everyone is. That knowledge changes how you behave. You push through pain longer than you should. You hide weakness. You volunteer when you're exhausted. Because being visible matters more than being healthy. It's a dangerous strategy, but it works until it doesn't. At night, you lie awake thinking about how thin the line is between crew and burden. How quickly identity shifts when productivity drops. On land, people age gradually. Here, usefulness can vanish overnight. You realize something deeply unsettling. Pirate life doesn't kill most people outright. It just waits until they're no longer worth keeping around. And if you're honest with yourself, you don't know which ending scares you more. Weather stops being something you talk about and becomes something you obey. You don't check forecasts. You don't debate possibilities. You watch the sky the way you watch a superior's face, looking for signs of trouble. Adjusting before you're told. Clouds mean work. Wind means work. Calm means work too, because calm never lasts. You learn the language of weather without words. A shift in air pressure that makes your ears feel strange. A change in the sea's texture. The surface tightening, darkening, losing its casual rhythm. Birds disappearing when they shouldn't. These details matter more than time or date. They tell you how much pain is coming. When the wind turns against you, everything slows and strains. Sails fight back. Ropes bite into your palms harder. Progress becomes an argument with nature. And nature doesn't compromise. You pull until your shoulders burn, knowing full well that the ship might still lose ground. Effort doesn't guarantee results here. It just proves you tried. Storm preparation is ritualized anxiety. Securing loose objects. Double-checking knots. Reinforcing what can be reinforced. The process gives everyone something to do while fear gathers. You work faster not because you're efficient, but because stillness leaves too much room for thought. Historians still debate how accurately sailors could predict weather before modern instruments, and whether experience truly improved survival. Some argue seasoned crews sensed storms early. Others point out how many ships were still lost despite preparation. Standing here, eyes fixed on a darkening horizon, you understand both views. You can sense danger. You just can't stop it. Bad weather doesn't need to be catastrophic to be dangerous. Days of relentless wind wear you down. Cold rain soaks through everything and never quite dries. The ship becomes slick, hostile, turning simple movement into risk. Injuries spike during these periods, not because people are careless, but because exhaustion erodes precision. You notice how tempers change with the weather. Long stretches of bad conditions make everyone quieter, shorter, jokes disappear, arguments become more likely. The environment reaches inside people and rearranges them. By the time the storm passes, everyone feels altered. At night, the ship sounds different in rough weather. Louder, more alive. Every groan feels like a warning. You lie there, bracing instinctively with each roll. Muscles never fully relaxing. Even sleep becomes a negotiation with motion. You think about how modern you complains about rain ruining plans, about wind making things inconvenient. The comparison feels almost insulting now. Weather here isn't inconvenience. It's authority. And it issues orders you cannot ignore. As the wind howls and the ship leans hard into it, you understand something fundamental about this life. You don't live on the sea. You live at the mercy of it. And mercy, out here, is not a dependable resource. You stop thinking of the future as something long and continuous. It breaks into short, manageable pieces, until the next meal, the next watch, the next stretch of decent weather. Anything beyond that feels speculative, almost indulgent. Planning too far ahead invites disappointment. And disappointment is heavy enough already. You notice it in how conversations change. No one talks about someday anymore. They talk about after this run. Or if we make the next port. The language shrinks to fit reality. Big dreams don't survive well in small, moving worlds. You catch yourself doing it too. You used to imagine what you'd do with your share of the loot. Where you'd go, how you'd live differently. Now, those thoughts feel thin, like drawings on damp paper. You still carry the coins. But the future they were supposed to buy keeps getting postponed by storms, sickness, and the simple exhaustion of staying alive. Historians still debate whether pirates truly lived in the moment by choice or by necessity. Some suggest a deliberate rejection of long-term planning. Others argue constant danger forced their focus inward, compressing time into survival intervals. Standing here, staring out at a horizon that never changes, you suspect necessity did most of the work. The ship teaches you to be present in a very specific way. Not mindful, not peaceful, alert, always alert. Your attention hovers just ahead of danger, scanning for problems before they fully form. This constant vigilance keeps you alive, but it also drains you. There's no mental rest when the world demands readiness at all times. You start forgetting things that used to matter. Dates, faces from your old life, small preferences. They fade quietly, making room for more immediate concerns. Rope condition, wind angle, who's on watch tonight? Your mind reorganizes itself around relevance, and anything not immediately useful slips away. At night, when you try to imagine a different life, the image blurs. Solid ground feels abstract. Stability feels theoretical. You've adapted so thoroughly to instability that calm seems suspicious. You wonder how long it would take before you felt uncomfortable in a quiet room. As the ship moves steadily through dark water, you realize something unsettling. This life doesn't just threaten to kill you. It reshapes you so thoroughly that even if you survive, you may not recognize who you become afterward. And once that transformation is complete, leaving doesn't feel like escape anymore. It feels like loss. The fear of mutiny lives just under the surface, like a current you don't see until it pulls. No one announces it, no one says the word out loud, but you feel it in the way conversations break apart when certain people pass by. In the way glances check the captain's mood before anyone checks the weather. Leadership on a pirate ship is conditional. It lasts only as long as it works. You watch how authority is maintained, not with speeches, but with constant awareness. The captain walks the deck often, not to oversee tasks, but to be seen. Presence matters. Absence invites speculation. A captain who disappears below deck too often becomes a rumor factory. You notice how quickly dissatisfaction spreads. One missed opportunity, one decision that costs the crew a chance at profit. One storm handled poorly. No one complains openly at first. Complaints arrive sideways, jokes that land a little sharp. Questions phrased too carefully. Why'd we take that route? Could have waited another day. Couldn't we? The words sound harmless. The intent isn't. Historians still debate how common mutinies actually were among pirate crews and whether democratic structures reduced their frequency. Some argue shared decision-making prevented revolt. Others point out that democracy doesn't eliminate anger, it just delays it. Watching tension coil tighter with each hard choice. You understand how quickly agreement can turn into enough. You realize mutiny isn't about ideology. It's about desperation. When survival feels threatened, loyalty becomes negotiable. A leader who once seemed competent can become expendable overnight if the crew decides someone else might do better. Or at least differently. The scariest part is how normal it feels. No dramatic plotting, no secret meetings in shadows. Just a gradual shift in tone. A few people talking a little longer than usual. A few others listening more than they speak. The ship itself doesn't notice. It keeps moving, indifferent to who gives the orders. You lie awake one night, listening to footsteps above deck, wondering if they're routine or something else. You tell yourself you're being paranoid. Then you remember that paranoia is often just awareness without proof. If mutiny happens, it will be fast, decisive, confusing. There won't be time to choose sides thoughtfully. You'll react, not decide, and afterward, whatever version of order survives will present itself as inevitable. You think about where you'd stand. Whether you'd support the familiar risk or gamble on change. Whether you'd even be asked. In moments like this, you realize how little control you actually have. Survival depends on reading the room correctly, and acting before hesitation becomes fatal. As dawn creeps in, pale and unconvincing, you understand something crucial about pirate life. Freedom doesn't protect you from power struggles. It just removes the illusion that anyone else will stop them for you. Luck doesn't announce when it's running out. It just grows quieter. You notice it in small, nagging ways. A knot slips that never used to. Your foot misses a rung by an inch. A wave hits harder than expected, soaking you through when you were sure you were positioned safely. None of these things hurt you, not yet, but each one leaves a thin residue of unease. The ship hasn't changed. The sea hasn't changed. Something else has. You start replaying moments in your head, searching for patterns. Have you been slower lately? Less focused? More tired than usual? The answer is always yes. But only slightly. And that's what scares you. Big mistakes announce themselves. Small ones accumulate quietly, waiting to matter all at once. You hear older sailors talk about luck the way farmers talk about weather. Not as superstition, but as observation. Some men, they say, just stop being favored by the sea. They survive storms only to fall from the rigging on a calm day. They dodge bullets in battle and then slip on a wet deck and never get up again. The randomness feels personal, even when everyone insists it isn't. Historians still debate how much survival at sea depended on skill versus chance, and whether experienced sailors truly lived longer or simply appeared to. Records are unreliable. Survivors write history. The unlucky vanish. Standing here, watching the horizon roll endlessly, You realize how skewed every success story must be. You only hear from those who weren't selected for removal. You become cautious in ways that border on ritual. You check ropes twice. You step more carefully. You avoid standing near the rail when the sea grows rough. This helps. A little. But caution has limits. You can't control when a spar breaks. You can't control when a fight erupts behind you. You can't control when a storm decides today is the day it takes payment. At night, you think about probability without having the language for it. Each day survived feels like a coin flip that keeps landing in your favor. And you can't shake the sense that eventually, it won't. The crew changes around you. New faces replace old ones, but the ship remains constant. As if it's indifferent to who it carries. You watch someone else run out of luck. Not dramatically, just a sequence of small missteps that finally align badly. An injury, a fever, a night of bad weather. He doesn't die immediately. He just fades from relevance. Then from presence. The ship absorbs the loss and moves on. That's when the realization settles in. Heavy and undeniable. Pirate life doesn't require you to make one fatal mistake. It only requires you to keep living long enough for chance to stop overlooking you. And as the sea stretches out ahead, endless and uncaring, you understand that luck isn't something you use up all at once. It leaks away. And you never know you're empty until you are. The body gives up before the story does. That's the part no one tells you when they talk about pirates as legends instead of liabilities. You don't collapse in a single dramatic moment. You don't clutch your chest and fall heroically into the sea. You just slow down. It starts with recovery. You notice you don't bounce back anymore. A hard day used to cost you a night of bad sleep. Now it costs you 2. Then 3. Your muscles stay sore. Your grip weakens faster. You stretch instinctively, trying to coax your body into cooperating. And it responds like an old rope, still useful, but dangerously close to fraying. You hide it at first. Everyone does. You learn how to work around pain, how to shift weight, how to favor one side without making it obvious. You volunteer for tasks that look important but demand less strain. You smile more, complain less. Looking capable buys you time, even when capability is slipping. Historians still debate how long the average pirate actually survived. Months. A few years. Sometimes less. Some argue the lifestyle selected for extreme endurance. Others suggest it simply burned through men quickly and replaced them without ceremony. Watching your own strength drain in increments too small to argue with. You understand how both can be true. Your body starts making decisions without consulting you. Hands cramp unexpectedly. Knees ache when the weather shifts. Your balance, once instinctive, now requires attention. Attention costs energy. Energy is already scarce. It becomes a loop you can't step out of. You see the same process in others. Men who once dominated the rigging now stay on deck. Fighters who were fearless hang back just a little longer than before. No one announces retirement. You just notice who stops volunteering for the worst jobs. The ship notices too. Tasks stop coming your way as often. Not because anyone hates you, but because efficiency matters. A crew under strain doesn't gamble on declining tools. Someone younger, faster, less worn steps into your place without ceremony. You're relieved at first, then uneasy. At night, you lie awake feeling your body throb in multiple places at once. a chorus of complaints that never fully quiets. You remember when pain used to mean something specific, an injury, a mistake. Now it's just background noise. Like the creak of the hull. Persistent, unavoidable. You think about how modern life treats burnout, injury, aging, with rest, treatment, time. Out here, none of those are readily available. The sea doesn't care how much you've already given it. It only cares what you can still give today. And the terrifying part is this: you're still alive. Still breathing, still working, still technically surviving. But your body has started negotiating terms without you. And in pirate life, negotiations like that rarely end in your favor. You start thinking about endings. Not in a dramatic, doom-filled way, just practically. The way you think about weather or supplies. Every life out here seems to narrow toward a handful of outcomes. And you've seen enough of them now to recognize the patterns. Some people disappear suddenly, a fall, a wave, a blade in the wrong moment. Their ending is fast, almost merciful in how little time it gives for fear. Others fade slowly, their usefulness leaking away until the ship no longer has a reason to keep them. Those endings are quieter, heavier, and somehow harder to watch. You wonder which one would be yours. Historians still debate how most pirates actually died, whether in battle, by execution, or from disease and neglect. Popular stories favor cannon fire and gallows. Because those are easy to remember. Living through this, you suspect something less dramatic did most of the work. Exhaustion, infection, bad timing layered on top of a body that had nothing left to give. You imagine being captured, standing in chains, watching land pass by while knowing you won't step onto it freely again. You imagine being left behind in a port, too weak or inconvenient to bring along, watching the ship that became your entire world shrink into the distance. You imagine dying at sea, not as a legend, but as weight lowered quietly over the side. None of these feel heroic. That realization changes something in you. The last bits of fantasy finally burn away, leaving only clarity. Pirate life doesn't offer a meaningful death to balance its meaningless suffering. It just offers different ways of ending the same story. You think about how modern stories frame pirates as rebels, outsiders who rejected society's rules. That part is true, in a way, but rejecting the rules didn't mean escaping consequences. It just meant trading predictable ones for random, often worse alternatives. As night settles in, the ship moving steadily through dark water, you lie awake longer than usual. You listen to the breathing around you. Slower now, fewer voices than there used to be. You realize how many people from your early days aboard are already gone. Replaced without comment. You're still here, for now. But the path ahead feels narrow, bordered on all sides by endings you don't get to choose. Survival has stopped feeling like progress and started feeling like delay. And with that thought comes an unexpected calm. Because once you understand that there is no good ending here, you stop waiting for one. You just keep going, quietly, carefully, until the sea decides it's done with you. And you know, with a certainty that doesn't frighten you anymore, that day will come. By the time the end comes into focus, it doesn't feel like a climax. It feels like exhaustion finally being allowed to finish its sentence. You're still here, still breathing, still moving, but everything is quieter now. Not just around you, inside you too. The ship carries on as it always has, cutting through water that looks the same as it did on your first day. That's the strangest part. The sea never marked your struggle. It never acknowledged your effort. It never adjusted for how much you gave. It simply kept going, indifferent and endless, while you changed completely. You think back to the person who stepped onto this deck at the beginning, curious, nervous, maybe even a little excited. That person feels like a story you heard once, not someone you were. You've learned too much since then, felt too much, lost too many small things that never came back. Historians still debate why piracy continues to fascinate people, why stories of suffering, violence, and early death get polished into legends of freedom and adventure. Some argue it's rebellion we admire. Others say it's distance. It's easier to romanticize pain when it's far away in time. Sitting here, feeling the ship vibrate gently beneath you, you understand the simpler truth. People like the idea of pirates. They wouldn't survive the reality. You wouldn't survive it either. Not because you're weak, not because you lacked courage, but because this life doesn't reward effort, or bravery, or even experience. It rewards timing, it rewards luck, and it punishes bodies and minds until one of them gives out. You imagine modern comforts now, not luxuries, just basics: clean water, safe sleep, food that heals instead of drains. The thought doesn't hurt anymore. It soothes you, like remembering warmth after a long cold. The ship creaks softly, the sea breathes. Nothing needs your attention right now. Your muscles loosen. Your thoughts slow. The sharp edges of memory begin to blur. You don't need to stay alert anymore. You don't need to calculate, watch, or endure. Just let the image of the ship fade into darkness. Let the sound of water soften. Let the story drift away from you. You're safe here, now, far from the deck, far from the storm, far from a life you were never meant to survive. End of script. Sweet dreams.